we get to finally see in this movie how Gandalf and Thorin met, which is very cool. What was that like filming?
That was the first day back.
It was.
Yeah,
Okay.
of the reshoots that we did this year. So for me, the character had really settled, and I'd had some new ideas. I was so thrilled that they decided to use that piece of writing, which is in one of the appendices. And yeah, I spent 2 days with Ian face to face, not fighting, not on a green screen, literally face to face. I mean, they put him on a little box so that my eye line was slightly higher, but it was great. It was like doing theatre, and it was a really long scene. So, and Pete didn't cut into it. Really thrilling. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah. It's and we get a new perspective of Thorin, I think, with that scene as well.
Well,
when he was scared and on the run a little bit and very nervous.
Yeah, and I think what it really does is it helps you to understand why the quest is so important, not just for him as an individual, but in terms of the politics of Middle-earth. I think Gandalf is reticent to tell him the bigger idea, but it's a bit of a bookend. So when you get to the end of the film and they're in search of the Arkenstone, you really understand why and how important it is.
At the end of the last movie, there was a great scene where your character hugged Martin's character, and we thought that, you know, they'd go forward and be buddies of some sorts. How is the relationship as this film begins?
I think Bilbo is really forcing Thorin to question himself, to question his very judgmental nature. He was very anti-Hobbit in the first movie. In the second movie, Bilbo is really proving to be his greatest asset. You know, he's rescuing him time after time after time, and that relationship is going to become really intense in movie 3 and very singular. So it's the beginning of something very complex and interesting, I think.
We get a few twists in this film that didn't exist in the book. Do you have a favorite? We get, you know, Evangeline's character. There's some great stuff with Ian.
I think my favourite scenes are the scenes in Dol Guldur in terms of extra material, because I don't know if the fans necessarily understand this, but Peter is really setting up the Battle of the Five Armies very, very early on in the story. You know, that the raising of the Orc army with Sauron kind of appearing. When we get to the third film and the five armies come together, it really gives them a place that they've come from, and it makes it much less random than I think Tolkien wrote.
What's it like working with Manu? Did you get to work with him when he was doing his stuff?
I didn't, and it's a real shame, because the manifestation of Azog came very late, in fact after we'd shot. So I met him, I think, once in New Zealand, and then last night was the first time I've actually had a proper conversation with him.
He's a fascinating guy.
He's great, and you know what's really interesting? He does the voice of the character, and he completely created that role physically. It didn't exist before him, so, you know.
Yeah, you would expect that from a guy who was in Spartacus.
Yeah, and
so.
he brings sort of that really still, dangerous gravity to the role, and it's, yeah, I think it's genius.
Tell me what you think people are going to think when they see Evangeline in this movie. She's a little scene stealer sometimes.
I mean, you just look at her face and she sort of sparkles and makes you fall in love. I think a lot of men will want to be with her, and a lot of women will want to be her. You know, to be such a dynamic fighter and a great beauty and magical, it's a really brilliant creation.
And we get Orlando in this film as well. What was it like seeing him in costume for the first time?
It's sort of like stepping into the Lord of the Rings film. For a second, I'm looking at him thinking, am I watching the movie, or am I actually in the presence of Legolas? And I mean, we only really had one scene together, but it was very enjoyable. And I hung out with Orlando a lot, and we've become good friends. I really admire him. He works so hard at what he does, and it inspires me.
Tell me about working with Benedict. Did you help him at all when he did the motion capture to help him get his performance right?
You know what? No, that was completely him alone, but I did get the opportunity to go and work with him in the sound studio. There was one exchange which was happening at the end of the film when they come face to face, and I happened to be in town when he was in town, so we did come face to face in a sound environment. So I saw him physicalizing the dragon, which was great, and I got to look into his eyes, because I don't know whether they used any of his face in the face of the dragon, but when I was imagining...
He thinks they did. That's what he said.
They did.
Yeah.
When I was imagining the dragon, I had to imagine something, so it was a bit of a dragon, but I wanted to imagine Benedict's face as well.
So this movie comes out this month. Probably a lot of people are going to see it at Christmas. It's like sort of I think a lot of people have memories from Christmas of like going to see a movie. Do you have any Christmas memories from your youth that you'd be willing to share with us?
Yeah, you know, I think the first time the Lord of the Rings happened. It was
Evangeline said the same thing.
It was such an event, and again, waiting a whole year for the next one. And I saw the Rings film, I think it was in Ireland, in a cinema where they still had an intermission. And I remember coming out in that first intermission, and I couldn't stop talking about how exciting it was to finally see this. And you know, I think Christmas time, when the family can get to go to the movies together, it's nothing more perfect than The Hobbit, I hope.
Who did you go with? Do you remember?
Just a group of friends who were all kind of Lord of the Rings geeks, but we didn't dress up at that point. I think we maybe dressed up for the second film.
Nice. Just like the fans last night.
Just like the fans last night.